Hey everyone! So in this video, I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about my experience in Taiwan and my recommendations for do's and don'ts and the pros and cons of being here. So I was in Taiwan for a month and it was quite an experience because I've never been here before despite living in many different countries in Asia already. So I want to start off by saying that I really had a good time here. The people were very friendly, the food was delicious, and I think that it's kind of like a mixture of different Asian cultures. So I really want to emphasize on that. For example, I see a lot of influence from Japanese culture when it comes to the mannerisms. People are very polite and it's completely different from Europe, of course. And the next thing I want to talk about is the food. So I'm a big foodie myself, as I mentioned in my previous video. So I was really satisfied with the food here, definitely. My favorites being, for example, the beef noodles, tang yuan, which is a dessert of the black sesame dumplings, xiaolongbao, which are the pork dumplings in a soup, or there's a soup in the dumpling, and things like that. There were some foods that I tried that were definitely a little bit different, for example, the stinky tofu or the oyster omelette, and they were pretty delicious. The stinky tofu, of course, was pretty smelly, but it was tasty, definitely. So there might be some foods here that you look at that you're like, kind of like, what is that? It looks a bit weird, but if you try it, then you might be pleasantly surprised. The weather here, for example, is quite warm. We are here in October and it is about 30 degrees on average, so it's best to do things in the morning and keep the afternoon to chill out. You can still do things, but I would recommend to take an umbrella with you, wear some sunscreen or a hat. It's also likely that it can rain at any moment, so be prepared for that. So therefore it's also handy to always have an umbrella with you. Now, the things I really liked here is there are a lot of temples as well. They're quite beautiful. There's a lot of influence from Chinese art, for example, and I even saw a little bit of Thai art in there with some of the shapes. At least that is what I recognized from my experience of living in Thailand. So yeah, that is that part. And for example, the public transport system in Taipei is very good. So you have the MRT and you have the bus as well. I would not rely too much on the Google Maps of telling you, for example, how long it's going to take for you to get to your destination. Because, for example, if you go with a bus during rush hour, it can be quite busy and there'll be a lot of traffic, so it might take you a bit longer than you anticipated. The MRT during rush hours, you just might have to wait for the next train, but it's really not crazy at all. So also with the Google Maps, there we had a lot of times where, for example, we wanted to go to this restaurant and it said it's open and it was closed. So I also wouldn't rely too much on that, and you can also keep some alternative options for that. And when you arrive here at the airport, I do recommend that you get an eSIM if you want to always have some data with you. It was incredibly cheap, at least for my standard. It was 1,000 new Taiwanese dollars for 30 days. And that gives you a Taiwanese phone number along with unlimited data per day, so all the time basically. So you're never going to be worried about having not enough data to travel, especially when you're using your Google Maps. And I also did my currency exchange once at the airport, which I paid a set fee of 30 new Taiwanese dollars on top of the exchange rate. And I exchanged one more time at the Bank of Taiwan, and that was without a fee, but of course the conversion rate is a little bit lower. And when you arrive at the airport, it's good to definitely get a public transport card. So I got a iPass. You have a one-time fee for the card itself, and then you can top up the amount depending on how often you're going to use it for the bus and the MRT as well. And I also had one day where I forgot my card, but to pay the same amount without this card with a little chip instead is actually the same price. So that's really great. From reading things online, I actually did end up spending more than I thought I would. So for example, Taiwan is not as cheap as Thailand. You're still gonna pay around, on average, we paid around 150 NTDs for food for a meal every day. Which is alright, and of course it depends on your standard of what you want to eat and experience. If you go to the local restaurants or street vendors at the night markets, for example, then it can be somewhat affordable. But of course, if you want to try some a little bit more nicer cuisines or restaurant, then you will be paying more as well. So we rented a scooter down south in Kaohsiung because we wanted to be a little bit more free with where we want to go. For example, it might take an hour with public transport and 30 minutes with a scooter. I have driven in Thailand and I have my license in the Netherlands, in the Netherlands, of course. So here there are a couple of different rules when it comes to driving on the road with a scooter. For example, you cannot take the highway, it's the road with the flower sign, with a scooter. That is only for cars and larger vehicles like motorcycles. So you might have to take a little bit of a longer route if you're doing further destinations with a small scooter. Now, also, there are a lot of stoplights here, so you do have to have some patience. We were quite surprised, and here they actually put like how long it's gonna be before the light turns green. But on the way to Tainan, when we went to the museum, it was a lot of stop and go and stop and go. So you do have to mentally prepare for that. I thought it was gonna be a little bit more breezy, but yeah. Sometimes it happens. But generally the traffic rules here are good and they are kind of made to protect the scooters. For example, if you want to turn left on some main roads, you have to go on to the right side and then line up in order to go left when you wait for the traffic light. So I think this is not applying to cars and it's only applying to scooters to protect them from further accidents. If you want to go buy some groceries for breakfast, for example, I highly recommend PX Mart. This is like a big chain of a supermarket all over Taiwan, and it's very convenient because you can buy, for example, yogurt or fruits and things like that. And if you want to buy water as well, it's definitely cheaper than the convenience stores like 7-Eleven or Family Mart, as they are for convenience. I was able to meet a few people here. I had an old friend of mine take us around in 2 different spots. So we went to the night market together and then we also went to a museum. So that was really nice. And I also got to meet a couple of tattoo artists that work here and elsewhere as well. So that was really fun. People are generally quite friendly here. Maybe because I'm quite tattooed, I will get some stares sometimes. But I guess that's anticipated as here there are tattooed people, but it's not as common as Europe, for example. And with the language, it was pretty doable because even if you don't speak Mandarin or Chinese, it's actually okay. Like you can manage. Of course, now we have Google Translate, which is much easier than when we didn't have it. So that's nice, but the younger people definitely do speak English, which is helpful, and if you look a little bit lost or ask for directions, people don't really hesitate to help you out, so that's really nice. Overall, I had such a great experience for my first time in Taiwan, and I'm really glad to also be able to share with you my tips so that if you ever travel here, that you can experience it for yourself and also be prepared for it. And one last thing I will talk about is that it is so refreshing that there are hardly any tourists here. If you compare, for example, to Korea or Japan or Thailand, there's really not that many tourists. So for example, if you're going to a more touristic spot like a scenery or a temple, it's pretty quiet. So you can have your own time to take your videos or pictures or enjoy the scenery or whatever that you wanted to do. And it's generally just not busy, so that was really refreshing since I come from Amsterdam and it is a city just full of tourists. So that is a really good point of coming to Taiwan. The next travel we're going to be doing is to Korea, and after that I'll be going to Japan as well. So I'm really excited to share with you those videos and my journeys over there and my experiences. I hope you really enjoyed this video, and if you did, then leave a comment or subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!